And don't worry, we can edit stuff out too.
Okay. We'll see.
Well, this is a new thing. I've never done a podcast with my dad, but we had been talking about doing something and building something together. So I figured I'd have you on.
Okay. Should be interesting. This is my first time on a microphone with headphones, too.
You were in a band though in high school, weren't you?
Oh, yeah. We were a rock and roll band, yes.
Yeah.
Modeled after the Beach Boys. We were called the Islanders.
The Island. Did you guys wear like floral shirts and stuff?
Yeah, we did. We won a couple contests. We had we had a guy, our lead singer, Phil Collins. We used to practice at the restaurant. And my mother would come up and said, Phil, you're not a singer, you're a screamer. And it stuck with them for the last 5 years. So, but it's always fun.
Yeah. So one of the reasons I wanted to do this is Luca, he's 14 months old now.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had a lot of revelations as a new dad, reflecting back on our relationship as you being my dad.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that I was curious about is when you became a dad, because I was your first child and your best child. But when you became a dad, what were some of the things that you noticed in Pop that you wanted to change in the way that you raised me?
Well, the first thing I remember growing up, I'm from an Italian background. All four grandparents came from Italy. None of them spoke English. And it was a little different growing up. My father worked every day, had Mondays off. And growing up, we always worked on Mondays, and I hated Mondays. But as I got older, played baseball and football. He was a coach on football. Baseball on Mondays, he'd go out and hit the ball. But we never did anything else because he worked all the time. And my thought was, and I told Becky, my wife, that if we have any kids, that I will not be in a restaurant business because I don't want them to be raised just by their mother. But as time went on, Pop never did get too involved.
With us?
Well, he was more involved with the grandkids than he was with me and the other brothers that I have. But he was a great grandfather. So I was thinking about it. So as time went on, and this is something to think about. You blink and time goes by, so you can't keep putting off something till it's too late. So when we had the firstborn, I think it was Sergio was his name, yeah. Sergio, the firstborn, I decided, to get out of the restaurant business. We lived in New Jersey at the time, and I studied to get a Series 7. At that time, and this is really dating, the tests were on floppy disks, if anybody know what a floppy disk is. But anyhow, so I would study while we were home and then go to the restaurant to work at night. And during the day, it took Sergio. We did a lot of little things. But the goal was to be able to be around more often.
I remember you studying for your Series 7 in that back bedroom,
Yep.
that 148 Sparta Avenue.
Yep.
And I would go in there and you'd be on the computer studying for your Series 7. You would have the television on doing, like I had the ticker at the bottom.
Yep.
And then you would be doing like push-ups and sit-ups. And every time I came in though, like to talk to you, you would always stop.
Yeah.
And you'd always make time to at least talk to me, even though you were trying to bust your ass to get that done.
Well, it was just a lot of this is all mental anyhow, and you have to put what you really want. So I want a relationship with Sergio and my
You can
daughter.
say me. You can just say you want a relationship with me.
Well, we don't know about that yet. Still working on that. But anyhow, I did want a relationship because my father, he never knew the word love or this and that. And the only way that came into the family was because of my wife, Becky, who was from Texas. So I didn't mean to get off track. But I studied for this. Becky would come home in the evening. We'd kind of hand off the kids, and I'd go to work. So I had a friend of mine that worked for a company in New York, and he said he would sponsor me to get my Series 7, which is all backwards from doing it today. So he would sponsor, paid my fees, I passed the test, and then I had to find a job. Usually you would go to one of the brokerage or the houses, and they would hire you, pay for your fees, get you to go through the testing, and then they would hire you. So I was trying to get on with that company, and I did. Old company named A.G. Edwards in Mendham, or in Madison, New Jersey, which was just about an hour's ride. So it turned out okay. So we decided that, to be more involved with Sergio. I do remember Sergio couldn't throw a baseball. I mean, I thought he was maybe a little off-centered on the baseballs. He would aim forward, and they'd either go right or left, like his uncle DJ. DJ couldn't play baseball either, but I figured if he's going to be representing me, I better show him how to throw a baseball. So he would go out. I remember from one of the movies where they would get a newspaper, roll it up, put an elastic band like you were delivering newspapers, and throw it. And it did correct his throwing ability. So he was not a baseball star, but at least he wouldn't embarrass me throwing a baseball in public.
Yeah.
So that all worked out pretty well.
Audience knows that I'm Sergio, so you can just say me, you, whatever it is. They know who it is. But what I would say is, I could, as I've gotten older, and you've talked to me a little bit about Pop and kind of like how your upbringing, I can see why you wanted to make those changes. A lot of times, the guys who fought in World War II came back extremely stoic, and then they never had any resources on how to really display emotions.
Right.
And they kind of just suppressed it. And they call them the greatest generation for a reason. One, because they were probably one of the last ones who had such a selfless act in fighting for something that was huge, our freedoms. Right. Two, they never bitched about it at all.
Nope.
Not once. They just did what they had to fucking do. But part of that was the next generation after that didn't understand, didn't always have a father figure that would be emotionally available.
Right. Because I remember growing up, we grew up, it was a 5-story restaurant my grandfather bought, and a couple barns. And inside one of the sheds, there were all these German helmets, German bayonets, and just a lot of stuff. But my father never talked about it. And even my father-in-law, who was a World War II veteran, they didn't talk about it. So I think it was part of that generation. So it was a little different, but very historic, because we found a way. They had these World War II tours in D.C. to show off the World War II memorial. And I was watching TV here in Denver, and I saw this come across. So I contacted my brothers, and we arranged for my father to go to D.C. He usually didn't talk too much, but when he got on the bus with all these World War II veterans, he felt like he was at home again, very comfortable. And it turned out to be a great thing. The state police, had a color guard with the bus till they got on the main drag to D.C. and really honored these veterans. So even though it was a little different today, the family life was still good, but I wanted to be better for Sergio and Karina growing up. So that's why we kind of did this stuff.
And I think that's the one thing that I've seen, right, as a new dad. I never wanted to be an entrepreneur at all. I never wanted to go out on my own. Buddy did it. Pop did it. Those are our grandfathers. Pop's your father. Yeah. And then you did it. And so I'm sitting here, and now I'm an entrepreneur, and I have a kid, and there's this constant battle between wanting to build your company and make money and provide for your family, and then being part of your family's life, because, as you said, time goes by like that.
Right.
So how did you balance those two? I mean, I saw it from a distance, but like, how did you think about it?
Well,
I didn't even see it from a distance. I experienced it
I'll tell you what,
firsthand.
in the beginning, it was all credit cards. I didn't make a lot of money because we wanted to do everything for the kids. It really was. I mean, that was a priority. It wasn't the job. We did have credit card debt. Not saying it was the brightest thing to do, but the business was not the main priority. The main priority is to be here to raise Sergio the right way and Karina the right way. Because I think the big problem today is people are not involved in their kids' life. They expect the teachers to raise them, and I think that's why they don't have that real strong relationship as they get older.
Yeah.
So, but it's real important at that point.
But there is this idea that like if you don't make money, you can't support your family, and if you don't have the family, then the money means nothing.
Yes or no? I mean, I think it's the priorities. You're right. I mean, I was fortunate. Becky and I both worked, so we kind of balanced out each other. But the priority was always the kids first. We didn't do anything too crazy, except maybe we addicted Sergio to Disney World, which he's still on that type of problem right now because he's passing it on to his kids. We used to go to Disney World when Sergio was, I think he was 4 years old, pretty young. We went there to break him out of his bottle habit because he couldn't put the baby bottle down. So we kind of not snuck him in. We went to a character breakfast. Mickey came around and we kind of said, "You really like Mickey? Give him your bottle." So we broke the bottle habit then. But the bad thing about it is that we went every couple years, and we still do.
Yeah.
But that's part of a family tradition that has been passed on, I think, in a good way because Luca, he went, but he didn't remember anything. But it's just part of it that we have things that we can all share together. Yeah.
But kind of coming back to this, there's this family part of it, right? Without the family, nothing that we do in our business means anything.
No.
And without the business, we can't support our family.
Correct.
So how did you balance that?
Well, it was hard. I wasn't making a lot of money at A.G. Edwards because the whole goal was to build a book, manage money and this and that. But Becky kind of made more money than I did at the time, so we were able to balance it out.
Was that a driver though for you to like want to make more money for the family, so we could do things and have a certain lifestyle, or you were just like, I'm just trying to fucking figure this shit out. Like, I don't know what's going on.
I'm still trying to figure it out after this. So, yeah, I've been doing this since '92, I guess it was.
Yeah.
In the advisory, which I don't do anymore. I do manage corporate retirement plans. But the goal was to be able to share and do things and have the time. So we really didn't think about the money. It was there, and somehow we managed to live within our means, which I think is something a lot of people don't do today. So he's trying to be up with the Joneses, this and that. But we tried to stay within our own budget. We had a car my mother gave us. The muffler didn't work. They didn't wear seatbelts, and it'd be me, Sergio, and Becky, and we put Sergio on the armrest in the middle of the seat and go to the movies together. But we just tried to live within our means, and I think that's probably a real key to have some type of success with your family. You don't want to, go out and buy a real big house, brand new car, just to try to stay up with the Joneses, and what happens then you have so much stress on you that the family becomes the last thing you're concerned about. It's always trying to do other things.
Yeah, and I think even as a kid, even though we didn't have, a lot of money, I never felt like we didn't have it.
Yeah.
In the sense that it was I knew that we didn't have like a large amount of money to go out and do a bunch of shit.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you and Mom always made Karina and I feel like kids.
Yeah.
Like you allowed us to, I think it was just in the way that you packaged it. Like I remember one time when we first moved out here, you were starting over. Mom was just starting at her job because we just moved here from Texas and we didn't have a lot of money. And the way you packaged like this idea of going to get 29-cent and 39-cent hamburgers from McDonald's, you're like, get as many as you want. And I was like, really? Right? And we did it. But like, you did what you could with what you had.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really special from a parenting standpoint. And that's something that I've took on my own is right. Even though, I can't do everything I want for Luca, we're going to do what we can with what we have.
And that's the best way to do it, because then, you don't want to have your kids expecting the best when you really can't afford it. Because then it becomes a disappointment over time. So with Sergio and Karina, Friday nights, we'd get the biggest box of tacos from Taco Bell, and it was like a party, even though it was only a couple dollars at the time.
It was great.
Yeah. So, we have no regrets looking back. I mean, the only regret was that, we just probably didn't have a nice car or a bigger house at the time, but we did everything together.
Yeah.
Becky would take care of Sergio, and one of the things, that I'll have to pay him back on is when he was younger, his uncle DJ bought him one of these little trucks, battery trucks that you could drive, and we had just bought a brand new Ford van. And Sergio ran into the van and put a dent in it. So when Luke is a little older, I figure have to buy him some type of little car that he could drive so he could dent one of Sergio's cars. The dent never went away, but the memory stayed forever too. So, but it's those things. We didn't think twice about it. We'd go apple picking, things to keep the family together, to grow. You don't have to spend money on. We went up apple picking, pumpkin picking, come back, Becky would make apple pie or cobbler at the time.
Yep.
And it built a family relationship. One of the things I remember, we used to love ant farms. And I had bought Sergio an ant farm, and our daughter was there. And Sergio's grandmother, Sue from Texas, was there. And somehow the ants got loose. We're putting them in there. And what Sue does, she gets a vacuum cleaner and sucked them all up. And we had no ants for the ant farm.
I remember that.
But it's little things like that you build off of. It doesn't have to cost money.
Yeah.
And I think that's really what the key is. And having a good relationship with your spouse or your husband is the whole key to it. Yeah. It's not a one-way street. It's basically a team effort.
100%. I feel like as a family, we have a unique situation where we're really close, the four of us.
We
and
are?
Now, yeah.
I didn't know that. Yeah, okay.
Jesus. But we're really close, the four of us. And, we have Lizzie and Corey and Luca now. But for a long time, it was just the four of us, and we were really close.
Yeah.
But there was points in our relationship when we weren't close.
Oh, yeah.
What do you feel like, from your perspective, what do you feel like was one of the reasons that you and I maybe kind of grew apart as we got older, even though we had such a solid foundation from all the hard work you and Mom had put in when we were younger?
Well, I think sometimes this may really. I think sometimes I am going to. I think political views come into play. Yeah. And I've learned, I saw this a couple years ago, and it's fine to have different political views. I don't have a problem with that. What I have a problem is when you have to force feed it onto somebody who doesn't want to hear it. You should accept people for their own beliefs. And I didn't probably agree with a lot of the drinking and this and that at the academy or some of the other things, but it wasn't my life at that point either. So even though I may not have really liked it, it wasn't for me to change it because you were of the age of you were old enough to make your own decisions, even though I wouldn't approve or think they were right. But it didn't change it may have stressed it a little bit, or things, but that was okay.
Yeah. I mean, so politically, we never really got into that conversation probably until 2016 when Trump started to run in office.
Right.
And then there was some disconnect about, one side versus the other, who believed in what, the stance of it, the whole movements. And we could never really come to even a conversation on it because for whatever reason, it would, tensions would just elevate, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that was kind of later down the road. And the academy, I understand, like, if you have ever been around an academy grad when they're at the academy, just watch out. It's a train wreck for a little bit.
Yeah.
But, there's this time that I feel like when I moved back and I got out of the military up until 2016, where you and I were kind of like on this trajectory of kind of growing apart. And it wasn't drinking, right? Yeah. And partying like that, even though you did that in college too.
No, and I never did that.
Bullshit. And it wasn't the political thing. So what was it?
I don't know. Maybe it's just because you had finally matured into a person you were going to be, and maybe I didn't like it. I don't know. I mean, it's really hard to say it was one thing or another.
Was it because, like, as I was maturing into a person, you felt like I didn't need you anymore? Was that a hard?
No, it wasn't needed. Maybe I didn't like the way you were doing certain things or the way the progress was, in my opinion, but that doesn't mean that I'm here to change it. And I think that's where people have destroyed relationships. They don't accept people for who they are. I mean, it took me a while to just go through some things to accept it. I can't put a finger on what exactly
Yeah.
it was, truthfully. But
there was tension between us for a bit.
yeah, I don't know. Truthfully, you know, I can't even remember because at this point it's irrelevant.
Was
But
were you sad in that moment when we were kind of growing apart?
oh yeah, yeah, because I do remember not talking for a while, but I thought to myself, you know, time goes by too fast, and if you can't either forgive or forget, then you have a problem. So even though I don't remember why I didn't talk to you or didn't want to talk to you, even sometimes not even be around, but I tried to look at the big picture that tomorrow somebody could be gone.
Yeah.
You don't know. So what do you do in that case? You just have to accept, even if you don't like it. And I'm sure there's a lot of you out there that probably don't like what your parents do or what they are. And but it comes back to you, or it came back to me. If we want a relationship, somebody's got to bend or slowly plant the seed to get back together.
Yeah. And I definitely think that you started to lead that.
So,
Was there like a moment, when you had that kind of conversation in your head about, tomorrow things could be gone or somebody could be gone? Was there like something that happened in our lives that made you kind of like wake up to that?
I remember that letter you asked us to write you. That was back in 21, I think it was.
Yeah.
Something like that. And, it started off nice, but it ended up not as what I thought it would be. But it was all truthful. It wasn't that I was lying about anything. But I think sometimes when you write something down, it's easier to say than saying it face to face. And the only problem is it's in writing and it's there all the time because I still have it on my computer. But it was just one of those things. And I really, can't put, well, maybe it wasn't. I don't want to bring up anything past,
so just so you know, like part of this is.
But yeah, I know. I remember when there was we kind of agreed on doing a joint venture in Silverthorne.
Yep.
And for some reason, it probably mine that we didn't put in writing what was to be expected of each other.
Yep.
So, but ended up with the property, and I assumed, which is something you should never do, is that we were going to split everything going forward, but it didn't turn out that way.
Yeah.
So I had to make a decision whether or not I can afford to keep that, which put me in a position where I had 3 different mortgages on properties, and it was a decision to make, but it was a learning experience too. And it's probably something that goes back to business too. Never assume, never go by words, but it's always, if you have it in writing, it's a lot easier to handle. But it didn't ruin a relationship. It may have strained it for a while, but it didn't ruin it because you're not going to get another, family member, especially, you can't replace somebody. So you have to accept the good and the bad and learn from it. And that's what we kind of did. And the reason I say that is because I had a brother who passed away years ago, but he was really important to everybody, and everybody accepted him for his personality. I mean, he was gay, and which was not a problem with the family. Everybody accepted him for being that. But when he passed away, it was a big void. My parents never really recovered from it. So those are the things that you have to be aware of, that you think you're going to live forever, but something may happen where you don't.
Yeah.
And then you're going to regret shoulda, woulda, coulda, and you didn't.
Yeah. A lot to unpack there. I asked you to write the letter.
Yeah.
I read Mom's. I was like, oh,
that was good.
I was like, that was really nice. And then I read yours, and I was like, oh, this is taking a really interesting turn. And like, I remember sitting in the room upstairs on the floor, and I was just like, I was crying reading it. I was like, I didn't know he felt this way. And at first I was like, fuck you. I was like, all right, like if you can't even talk to me about it, like why the fuck are you putting it down on paper? But then what it realized is I was like, oh, it opened up an opportunity for us to have a conversation.
Yeah.
And at the time, I think it's always hard to know where somebody had been sitting, like where you had been sitting without you had ever talking to me about it. But I think that letter allowed us to start to go into some deeper conversations. And I remember going on a hike before my wedding.
Yeah, I
Do you remember this?
Yep. You tried to kill me on the way up.
Yeah, I tried to murder you. That's what Italians do. I was like, hey, I don't like what you said. I'm going to kill you and bury you. Yeah. But we brought up the silver thorn thing. And I think you made the assumption and I fucked it up because, when I look back on that, I think I mishandled it very poorly. And I feel like I probably misrepresented what was happening. And we talked about that. And it was a learning process for the both of us that you can do business together, but the rules of engagement and everything have to be very clear for everybody.
I agree. So, yeah, I mean, it didn't ruin a relationship.
No.
In fact, it probably made it a little bit stronger too, because, I was PO'd for quite a while because I thought this property could have, which it would have, made even more money, but I had to make a decision on, do I keep this property or do I maintain the house that my wife wanted? Yeah. So it's not that I'm a real estate market. I'm not. I love, it's just one of those things where we're very fortunate because, when we bought this property, not the one in Silverthorne, but the one in Grand Lake, I didn't even want to tell Sergio about it because I felt he was going to, try to read us, you shouldn't do this, do that.
I would have.
So we told his buddies from the Air Force, but we didn't tell him. And then, but what we ended up doing was we bought it right in 2008, 2009. Not the smartest time. But
hot market then.
Hot market. That's when the crash. First time stocks, real estate, and bonds all lost money in American history. But we stuck through it. This was a dream of my wife's more so than mine. We built the house, and the house now is great because it has family tradition, it has great memories. Now Luca doesn't have to worry about all the BS because it's already done and it's ready for him to be shared, and it's a great place to go, and everybody enjoys it. Even Lizzie, which I think it's one of her favorite spots because it's away from people. She can enjoy, just sitting there with a blanket or going out on the deck, and it seems to bring a lot of comfort to everybody.
It does. There. And I think you're right. I think if you had told me in that season of life, I probably would have, at 21, thinking that I know more than I actually know, told you why it's a bad idea. So I'm glad you didn't tell me. I think it was the right move. I wasn't happy at the time, but I think it was the right move.
Yeah, because his roommate, Mike Bordell, knew about it before he did, and that was even worse. But it was good. It all works out.
Yeah. So. I think you're right, though. I think you and I were constantly playing the game of bend, don't break in this relationship.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I knew that I always wanted to have a closer relationship with you. And I think all of the things that transpired, right? The Silverthorne home, you and I not talking, then me getting this letter, I think it all led to kind of a point in time where we had to make a decision on what we wanted. Yeah. And I think from there, you and I have been in lockstep about building a relationship that actually matters and that actually has a connection to it.
Yeah. I mean, it's so easy to just get aggravated or PO'd at the other party. And then what do? You lose that time where growth happens, people change, and I see that a lot. So that, sometimes you got to just take a deep breath, say he's who he is or she's who she is, and accept it. Otherwise, you're going to miss out on stuff, and I didn't want to do that. So we'll go backwards a little bit. This is one of my favorite stories. When Sergio was really young, we lived in New Jersey, and
if you're going to tell them about me shitting my pants, we can just this is better than that one. God. So we had gone out to Cincinnati. My roommate,
we were going to go into business together. And his son was playing hockey and had rollerblades on, and Sergio wanted to learn how to ice skate or rollerblade. So we said, okay. So we came back to Jersey and decided to teach him how to ice skate. So there was a league down in Mending Arena, and of course you have to go out and buy the equipment. So of course Sergio needed a cup, and we talked about it. I said, Sergio, for protection, because the puck, if it hits you, it's going to hurt. And he said, okay, Dad. I said, let's go find one. And he asked me, well, how do you know what size? So you get the cup, I said, and you put it over your face. If it covers your face, it's the right size to wear in your pants. So it was probably the best time, but I can't wait to do this to my grandson, Luca. But these are things that you look back on. I mean, it's lasted. He laughs. Yeah. Sergio laughs at it now. But you have to, sometimes put everything aside and decide, this is your family. This is your blood. Enjoy it. Yeah. You only get the few shots of doing this. Before you know it, time goes faster and faster. I mean, I look back, Sergio's almost 40. I'm almost 50 now. And, time has gone fast. So,
Oh, shit. I got a couple more questions for you. What is the hardest part about being my dad?
Other than you? Well, the hardest thing, and it's not a hard thing, but one thing I learned from Sergio and these podcasts or things he's put on the internet or Facebook is that he made a comment one time about going out to dinner. So I decided that I should probably follow his idea. So I told Sergio, I said, Mom and I are going to have breakfast, but I think we'll have sex first. Because he said, if you're going to go out before, go out for dinner, you should have sex. So I decided, I called him, texted him. I said, Mom and I are going to have lunch, but I think we'll have sex first. So, to me, those are the kind of things you keep to yourself. Just to put it out to everybody. So that's where the generations are a little different.
Yeah.
But, we don't do it at dinner because we're too tired by then. So it's only breakfast and lunch.
I think I remember getting that text message. I was like, holy shit, this is great. So, all right. And I think this is good for you to understand, right? What I've learned is that a lot of people are in relationships and they're not happy.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of that can stem from a lack of intimacy and connection and really the ability for couples to stay connected post-kid, stay connected post-issues, work through their problems, and deepen their relationship.
Yeah, what you can't do, and this was Becky, my wife, mentioned.
No more sex stories.
Yeah, it's, communication. That's the number one thing.
Yeah. Because
you can't assume what somebody is thinking, because when you start doing that, you're going to go down the wrong road.
Yeah.
So I didn't know about this, but Becky said, if we can't communicate, we're not going to stay married. And this was 40 years ago, she said that. And it makes a lot of sense, It's supposed to be a two-way street, not a one-way street. You're supposed to be able to share with each other, your thoughts, because it's important to have that relationship. And I agree with Sergio. Intimacy is fine and good, but it's not always that. You have to listen to your spouse.
Yeah.
You may assume you know what they're talking, but you don't know what they're thinking.
No.
They may look like it, and you say, oh, how are you? But it could be completely different than what you're thinking about. So listening and communication is probably the biggest key, and I thank Becky for bringing that, to
yeah. I think that's part of it. It's not just about, I know we're joking. It's not just about having sex, but it is about having a deep connection with your spouse, because the way I look at this is like that relationship becomes the framework for what your kids see.
Yeah.
So if Lucas sees that Lizzie and I love each other and that, we can hug each other and we can even not fight, like scream at each other, but, work through conflict in front of him.
Yeah.
Then when he grows up, he can be a better man for whoever he dates. And so I think there's an importance of being able to display a healthy relationship in front of your kid. But I think a lot of that stuff happens behind closed doors.
Yeah. I mean, they see how your parents act. I mean, my parents, you wouldn't want to know the way they acted because it was a little different. But over time, the relationship is important. I mean, my parents were they're not very affectionate. They yelled for all the time, and this was something I didn't want to be part of. So it was a commitment to myself and to the kids that we're going to be part of it. With Becky and I mean, I met my wife at a country western club in Houston.
Your club.
Yeah, my club, Hello, Texas. And one day, this girl was getting ice out of the ice bin. And I come over to her and I said, that's not real sanitary. He says, well, who are you? And I said, well, I'm the owner. She said, you're full of shit. And she left. So a couple of days, a week or two, she came back. I remember it was in July. I asked her to dance. She didn't know how to dance, and she was born in Texas, which is really a disparity. So I taught her how to two-step, and we met July, got married in November of that year. 4 months we knew each other. So, and we going on 43 years, I think it is. So, it was just one of those things, and we've had our ups and downs, but more ups and downs. I mean, we do a lot of things together. One thing I will not ever do is buy anything major without consulting her, because if we're not on the same page, I will never do it. So
But she
far,
has no problems buying diamond necklaces without your permission on the boat, right?
well, that's another story. Yeah, well, yeah.
Yeah.
But
I think that's a good rule, though, like to respect the boundaries of the other individual.
right, because right now we were talking about something in another country, but if
Tell them what it is.
we're thinking about, in Italy, we both have our dual citizenships, and I would like to buy a house but not become a resident. And if she didn't want to do it, maybe this is where the Italian comes in and make her an offer she couldn't refuse. So, but, the thought is it would be great because, we love Italy. We visit it 2 or 3 times a year. We found where we'd like to live, somewhere in Tuscany or Umbria. But it wouldn't be just for us. I mean, it'd be for the family to come over and enjoy it because the Italian heritage. So we're working on it, and she has given a verbal, but we have to find the right thing, and I would never do it without her. So, and the same thing with Grand Lake. I mean, we did it together. We have a lot of things that I think are important. We don't even buy a car without consulting each other. So, I've never come home with something that she would never expect unless it was a surprise for her.
Yeah, and I think that's just watching the way you and Mom kind of managed all that growing up, I thought that was a really good way to do it. All right, last question.
Okay.
You ready?
No.
I know you don't like the stuff that I put out on social media all the time.
I didn't say I didn't like it. I think it's a little more exposure than I would do.
Okay. What is something that you think the people who follow me should know that they don't know about me based on what they see?
Deep down, you're still a little kid with feelings, but will do anything for almost anybody. And that's a compliment, because a lot of people talk, but they don't walk the walk, where Sergio, if he says he's going to do something, he will do it for you. Not for some type of payment or anything else. He does it because he feels it's important, and that's the kind of person he is. He'll go out of his way, but just don't screw him or anybody else, because, you hurt yourself. But yeah, you could call him, ask him, and he would be there. He would drop everything to help out. That's the way I feel about him.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
This was fun.
Yeah.
Does this
Get paid for this?
I'm going to make you an offer you can't refuse.
Oh,
You're
yeah.
already down $90 to me for DraftKings. Remember when you lost golf last week? You came in all hot being like $5 a hole. I was like, all right. And then I just took all 9.
No, you took 7, and then you doubled the bet. You're an asshole.
You did. That's right. That's
I
right.
remember
We did
that.
double or nothing. You said, yeah.
So I had to write a check. I didn't have any cash left. So,
Yeah.
so
All right.
good.
Well, thank you for being on here.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is fun. I'm sure we'll be doing this again. But listen, I know there's a lot of you who are going to be listening to this or watching this, and you might have struggles with your dad or with your mom, or you maybe haven't talked to them, or you're in the position that we were in where you know that your ego is taking over and you're just not allowing yourself to have some of these conversations. And I would have you consider that at some point you're going to wake up and you're not going to be able to make the phone call to talk to your mom or dad. And at that point, you're going to be left with a lot of unresolved emotions, feelings, and things that if you didn't do what you knew was right, and if you didn't put aside the things that you know you need to put aside, you're going to have to live with that regret and that guilt for a long time. So, this is your notice to simply just explore what you want, let it go. And if we can work through it, pretty sure y'all can too.
Yes, you can.
All right. Thanks, y'all.
Thank you.